Okay. Um, we in this section will be on digital research, and in this particular topic will be on cloud security research, and we have been honored by 4 leading professors and researchers in cloud security. So I will go one by one and introduce each person so that you not really get confused which one I'm talking about. Okay. So the cloud security research have been if you listen to Along Cheers this morning, we have been many years, 10 years, probably. And then actually in cloud security, we have a lot of issues that very different from the traditional security. And since we not really have a lot of time, so I think we're going to cover only a few of them in this session for only 1 hour. So I will introduce Mr. Kai Lohr. He is the president of CSA Norway chapter, and he has doing a lot of research and business operation, and then a lot of he also has a book it's probably touched on human security and how human will right now that we have to deal with security to probably people to be aware of those issues. So this is something that probably Kai can share experience for that. And also he want to, the topic will be from research to practice based on his business experiences. So so Kai will have something to talk about for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that kind image. This one probably.
Yeah.
I will figure it out. So if you don't mind, I will be standing. I prefer that. Makes my ego flow better. So first of all, thank you so much for coming here and paying attention to this fantastic panel, inviting me to be part of it. I am not really a professor like these guys. I'm not even an academic. I am first and foremost a businessman. Hence my talk here is how can we take the great work these guys do and make it applicable for businesses. And my question is very simple. Why is it so hard to learn from research? And what I'm meaning about that is not really the research itself, because that is usually some great learning lessons. The challenge is how can we take those learning lessons and move them into the business space so that we can use them, applicate them, and make money. Basically, that is what we should be doing with at least some of this research. Let me see if I can get this thing to work. And this is, of course, the technique that I should have. Now it works. One more. There we are. So, just to make sure we all agree, research is good. I sincerely mean that, even when my slides go black. Research is good. What I find challenging is the implementation. So how can we take whatever research there is out there and align it to business needs, and how can we as business owners and business managers be better at telling our needs and exchanging this with the research community? If you see on my, let me see if I can do this. This side you see a mountain, it's called research, and on this one, another one called business, right? Imagine that these are 2 mountains, And between them, there is nothing but white space. It's like nothing. So how can I go from that side over there or the other way around? We need a bridge. We need something that can build us, a bridge that we can go from one side to the other. Or we need something that can bring these mountains closer together. And to do that, I think it's very important for us to understand parts of what makes these communities different. So let's first take a look at the focus areas. It works. So on this side, research, they have long-term focus. Usually, it doesn't really matter if it takes 1 year or 3 years or 4 years. It's fine. On the business side, on the other side, we need something today, right away, something we can take out there and sell. Research is good, but it takes too long time, so we need something to bridge this gap. The other one that I see a lot in Europe, and I don't know if it's true over here, but I see that a lot of research is focused on funding. And what do I mean by that? I mean that instead of focusing on bringing value to business, for example, their main systems are built to apply for funding sources from, for example, the EU or other funding sources. Then those funding sources decide or make the point of what to research. So while on the business side, the only focus we have is profit. Not 3 years down the road, but profit today. That's a challenge as well, of course, but it's a different challenge. So funding on one side and profit on the other side. A lot of research, as I see, focus on making things perfect. I clicked something, didn't I? I should not click now. So we will stay here. For research side, they need things to be perfect. And by perfect in academic sense, it means that it needs to be documented, tested, verified, all things you need to do and document it. Then you document your processes, your methodologies, everything. You make up reports, huge, fantastic. But for me, from a business perspective, it's like you find this fantastic research report and only 1/3 of it is actually about the research and the solution. And even that part of it, sometimes, this from my perspective, is a little bit too narrow focus, so I don't really see how I can applicate this in my business. While on the business side, we have a totally opposite perspective. Instead of making things perfect the first time, our focus is to create something we can sell as early and quickly as possible, something we can call the minimum viable product. And this leads to the next thing here. In research, you usually start wide, and then you narrow down, and you come into your very narrow topic. Somewhere along that funnel, I see researchers lose the business side. The business people no longer follow you because it gets too narrow. While on the business side, we tend to start small with, for example, the minimum viable product. And then as we see we gain success with that, we widen the focus. So these kind of focus areas affect the relations between these two groups. And I believe that we need to close this gap if we want to have more business value out of research. Now, I want the slides changed. So where should I hit? Be patient. Another thing that I see a lot is that in research, theory matters, and that is really good. Theory is important if you want to understand how things work and how we can use things. In business, wow, these slides are really... and it's the same there. So in business, it says practice matters, except when practice doesn't work. And that means in business, our focus is mainly to get things working, get things going, not really necessarily understanding why or how, but just get the results. In research, evidence matters if it's empirical. So you need to be able to document why these data that you have is the right data and why it helps support your case. While in business, the only real evidence you care about is your bottom line. Meaning, as long as you make money, you're happy. If you don't make money, you change into something else. That's the only evidence you will focus on in business. In European, or at least in Norway and academic tradition, you will see falsification is important. It's a way of falsifying your hypothesis to make sure that it is not possible to be wrong. In business, we don't care about falsification. Most of us don't even understand the concept. We only care about verification, and again, on the bottom line. Make me money, it's fine. The last point here is the researcher must be a subject matter in research. So you need at least a master's degree, possibly a PhD or even more. And then you become this subject matter expert, and then you can do research, and it's very good. In business, it doesn't really matter. Anyone can do business if they have a good idea and are able to communicate it, build whatever product, and get it to the market. And this also means then that in research, you have a lot of very, very skilled, very knowledgeable people. While in the business, you may be meeting people with no academic track records, no academic understanding or whatever, and still be professional and successful in business. Then put these two in the same room and discuss, and more times than not, I see these discussions fail because they talk different kinds of language. They have different kinds of mental models and understanding of the world. And we need, in my opinion, to kind of bridge this gap, to make it easier for business people to talk to researchers and the other way around, so that we can take all these fantastic, great ideas in research and turn it into products. And now, here we are. So my main question here to you guys, that I hope you take with you home when you leave here today, and also something that I hope we can be able to discuss in our panel today, is simply this. How can we bridge this gap between research and business? How can we together make it easier for both of these two mountains to close, or to make this bridge over it? I believe we need it. And I believe the sooner the better. And I will repeat that I believe that research is really, really important. But we also need business. Or let me paraphrase. I believe business is really, really important. But we also need research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kai, for sharing like idea, concept from research to business. We know that it's not easy, especially for a lot of professors in university in Thailand. We probably have would like to have same situation. We are in the same situation that many research in Thailand, like we can say, like it's on the shelf. It means that after finished paper, it's on the shelf. If nobody can like do something about it, and then you kind of like repeat over and over. So actually, building the graph would not be easy. I will have some question for you later after everyone finished talk. The next speaker is Professor Ryan Go from University of Waikato, New Zealand. He is the leading cybersecurity researcher in New Zealand, and right now have a big project, like 6 years, and then a lot of things to share with us today. So I really would like you to
All right, thank you, Professor Saksungwan. Because of my leg, I hope you don't mind that I sit down, and I'll try my best to keep it engaging as well. So my name is Ryan Koh. I'm from New Zealand. I'm originally born a Singaporean, and I'm still Singaporean. I'm working in Hamilton, New Zealand, and the campus It's surrounded by quite beautiful landscape. Reason for my talk today, probably before I start my talk, would like to address Kai's point, which is very interesting because that was actually my job before I went to university. I was in Hewlett-Packard Labs, and our goal every day was to bridge the gap. Yeah, so if time permits, I'll share a bit about the experience of how we did it. Yeah. So, so I would like to start with a story, right? It's about Google. So everyone here, I believe, use Google, right? Who doesn't use Google? Okay, so see, I learned from the morning session. So now I ask the minority to raise their hands. Yeah. So everyone uses Google, right? And we trust the Google engineer that they will keep our data safe. And so in 2010, Google site reliability engineer was caught for stalking teenagers. So he was looking at different group of teenagers' data on Gtalk. So this is, so they call it G-creep, right? So the person was caught eventually because, not because Google found out, but because the parents of the teenagers complained to Google and they sacked him. But what's more concerning is the red color box on the bottom right corner. It says there it's unclear how widespread his abusers were, but in at least 4 cases, blah, 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 blah. So there may be 100 cases, but we've only found 4. So that's the crux of my talk today, which is the loss of control of your data in the cloud. Yeah, so the project that I'm currently leading as a principal investigator is Stratus. So it's short for the very long name there on the top in yellow. So the goal of our project, right, is to empower cloud users to have control over their data in the cloud. Okay, and so when I do this, then it means next slide. Okay, so thank you. Yeah. So what's the benefits of Stratus? Actually, it's the goal is for businesses. So I was very happy that Kai started the roadmap for me. But to help the businesses, we must help the businesses to actually address what the users really need, which is the lack of control. So what we want to do now is to reduce the reliance on trusting someone else. Yeah, basically that. So if you upload stuff onto Google, or you want to use Dropbox, you can control and you know how many copies of your data are in the cloud, what happened to it, at what time, what has gone wrong, what can you do to stop it. Okay, so that's all. But what's the problem today? The problem today in the last bullet that you say is that it's very vendor-centric. The solutions are very vendor-centric. That leads us to the second bullet that you see there. If you get hacked, or if your data gets lost, do you know what to do next? So most of us will call the police or somebody else or some geeky friend to come and help us, right? But that's not usually the best solution, right? So the next slide, please. Yeah, so here's the funding specifications in New Zealand, right? For the funding, it's not so much about just the pedigree of the researchers or the team. It's about the goal. So the goal is actually, so this is a $12.23 million grant over 6 years. The research team is made up of Waikato, which is where I'm from, University of Auckland, a polytechnic called Unitec, and CSA. And that's why I'm here to share about this connection. So, yeah. Now this is the interesting slide that links back to Kai's talk. The goal is to do exports for New Zealand businesses so that at the end of the day, in 6 years' time, or even earlier if we can, so there will be 3 different stages and 2 stage gate processes where we review ourselves every 2 years, and we will see if this is commercializable or we will need to change our research directions. But the goal is the same, return control to users. Okay? So we are working together, back again, together with some companies, which are Gallagher, LayerX, Wynyard, Green Button, Macro Networks, and Aura Information Security. They are all different companies, but they are all friends because they need each other in the ecosystem, and they fall into three categories. Security companies trying to go into the cloud to get more businesses, companies providing cloud services that needs more security, and also users using the cloud to run their businesses. So they help each other. We have a complementary system, and we hope that this will address the gap that Kai has mentioned. And then at the same time, a few other industry partners from the health industry, from the IoT industry, and so on, or the banks, Bank of New Zealand, Australian New Zealand Bank, have also started to talk to us. Yes, thank you. So the research has about 4 goals, okay? The first one is, what has happened to your data? RA1, Research Aim 1. The second one is, how can I use the cloud and encrypt the data that I have, but the system administrator do not have to decrypt it at any point of time? So it means that the system administrators behind the scenes cannot see the files at any point of time, but they are able to do their processes. They can help to calculate the plus and minus and so on. But they do not know how much your bank account details are and so on, okay? Number 3 is, how do we achieve situation awareness? How do we know what went wrong? How do we stop what's happening that went wrong? And how do we perform all these things on the cloud, which has millions of instances? How do we do it quickly? Yeah, so how do we do it real time? So the challenge here is not situation awareness. The challenge here is real time. How do we make it immediate or almost near real time? And the last one is business continuity. So, for example, I'm sure some of you will look at Blocknun, right? Blocknun is a Thai popular website, and it's totally based on the cloud, I mean, or on the website. So they do not have a shop, right? So if they go down, people don't hear from Blocknun anymore. So you need the business continuity there to keep it running. Okay, so that's the goal. Together, all 4 will return control to the users. That's what we believe in. So in the interest of time, I prepared some demos. I'm not sure how much time I've left, so I'll adapt to that. Okay, yeah. So the first one is, so I'm going to just cover 2 research aims. The first one is a bit small, so I'm going to explain. The left screen is about how we log what changed in the cloud. The right screens, the top one is Alice, and the bottom one is Bob. So Alice, so Bob is the boss of Alice, okay? So Bob wants to issue some bonus at the end of the year, and he put Alice $0, himself $100, and maybe Claire $150, right? But Alice is a sysadmin, okay? So she knows that this is the period of time. This is a very simplistic example, okay? But to let you know the idea, she went to peep at what Bob has written in the computer, and she starts to look at it, and she realized she can't access it. So she used her system administrator account to look at it, and she started to look at the details. And then after clicking on this command, she will see, aha, okay, indeed, my boss hates me. Yeah, that kind of thing, right? So hence, I'm not getting the bonus, and then she starts doing more evil or malicious things. And that's a common scenario, and banks are very afraid of that. That's why they have multiple logging systems, fail-safe after fail-safe. Okay, so this is the first demo. This was powered by what we call Progger. Okay, so Progger was done in Linux, and this year we've done the same thing. I shown Progger last year in the same talk, but this year we have a Windows version which does basically almost the same thing, but it's tracked in the Windows environment, and also able to track all the copy and paste, the illegal renames, delete files, create files, and so on. So for the interest of time, you can appreciate that this is working. So I'll move on, and offline I can show more. So I'd like to move on to the last 2 short demos. Yep. So before I go on to the last 2 short demos, what if your system doesn't have Progger? Yeah, so we also need to create, so this is a research challenge. It's called provenance reconstruction. how do we create the provenance, which is what has happened to the data, from clues? So it's a bit like CSI cyber, right? You try to look for clues and you try to align them to finding out that Alice peeped at Bob's file. Yeah, so that's also another challenge. So we go to RA2, which is privacy and utility. So every time when you use the cloud, they say that you're end-to-end protection, but it's only end-to-end from your device all the way to their database. So for them to process your data in the database, they still have to decrypt it. It's still in plain text, okay? So I'm going to show you two short, less than 1 minute videos. Yep. So this is called bin encoding. The concept is basically, So the concept is, hello world, so this is some simple text, we do something, but how do we do it? So the next slide. So basically we call it bins. So bins can be a group of different, so maybe we can go 2 slides before to explain the bin concept. Yeah, this. So you see in the left side, you see A, B, and C. These are 3 bins. So the whole A, B, C, D, E, F, G until Z is divided into 3 bins. And because of the 3 bins, if it's a hello word, then it becomes A, B, 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 and so on and so forth. So this research was published in, it's going to be published, it's accepted, but will be showing in the proceedings in IEEE TrustCom this year in Helsinki, yeah, in August. So this is the reverse, so we can't reverse it. So we make it more complicated, we can't reverse it back. So that's the gist of the idea. It's a very simple thing. In cryptography, this is called trapdoor functions. Okay, so we'll move on to the video. So we did a RFC document, and then we started searching. So we say that, oh, now I can search, even though my data was all in gibberish. So we were able to search for like privacy, or even privacy with a spelling mistake, or even the word network, and then we can measure. So like what he said, we are trying to measure our accuracy here, empirical data. Yeah. So we move on. Then after this, I have another thing, which is homomorphic encryption. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to implement different forms of homomorphic encryption on the cloud. What does it mean? It means that I have data, let's say my bank account details, say I only have 50 cents or 100 baht or something in my bank, and then now I don't want my bank people to look at me, look at my how much money I have. So I'll decrypt it, right? And then I put it into the system. For the system administrators to work on it, they have to look at the data so that they can do 50 cents plus 50 cents equals to $1, right? So this kind of calculations will require somebody to see the data. We're trying to prevent that. Okay, so this is what it means. But of course, there's also other issues like key management. Yep. So then the school of thoughts, there are 2 main groups. One is fully homomorphic encryption, which means that you can do plus minus, divide, multiply. The second school of thought are the partial ones. We don't need to do everything. We just do the specific one so that we can quickly get to time to market. Okay? So this is a screenshot which is not turning out very well, but what it's trying to do is to show you that there were 50 votes, and to the sysadmin at the top, he was able to see only gibberish. They all have the same size. The sysadmin do not know whether it's a yes or a no vote, but with our code and our implementation of the partially homomorphic encryption, we were able to count. So the small dot at the bottom is the 20 votes for yes. So you can see that 30 people voted no. Yeah. So this is an application of the partial homomorphic encryption. Right. So what's the plan after this? We are trying to align these breakthroughs with the commercial products that our partners have. So since day one, our partners, industry partners, have joined our industry advisory group. Our project is divided into 2 groups. The scientific leadership team, which continues to talk about the science challenges. And then we have an interface to what we call the industry advisory group, which tells us what is going on at the moment and what will not work. So they'll come and tell us, no, this is crap. Yeah, it will never work. Yeah, and we have to listen. And that's their advisory. But at the end of the day, the decision is still made by the scientific leadership team. Okay, so that's the model of it. So the final product is that we will lead some tools which empower users. We see ourselves as the future Microsoft and Apple as empowering people with the PC capabilities. So Stratus will be for user-centric security. So that's all from my talk. And if you want to find out more, this is probably the most important photo you take if you're taking a photo. This shows you the link to where you can find more information about our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ryan. If you have any question, you can ask after everyone finished the talk, and then I will have some common question for everyone later. Okay, the next speaker is Professor Brett Lemperer.
Yeah, well done.
Okay, and then he is the professor from Liverpool, John Moore University in England, and he has been working on security since he got his PhD, and then he has a lot of things going on in like with the European project, and probably he can give us some idea about it. Okay, let's start.
Okay, so the stuff I'm going to be talking today is not really any European research. This is sort of an offshoot of my own personal research into digital forensics. Before I begin, I don't know if there are any representatives here, but I'd like to thank Connect to SEA for letting us make this event happen. Certainly for paying for myself and Kai to come, and also for paying for the great room that we're in and the catering that we've had. So I think I'm be guilty of something that Kai was mentioning academics tend to be guilty of before, but I'm obsessed with measuring things, and I'm obsessed with getting things perfect. Or at least, as I'm going to cover, having an idea about how badly we're really doing things, which to a large extent I don't think we know particularly well in digital forensics, but I think the cloud and some of the virtualization techniques there, if we get on board soon enough, should give us a good opportunity to fix this and correct it. Secret hand signal for next slide. Right. Okay, so as a little bit of background, I'm going to talk a bit about some of the support for digital forensics in the cloud. Well, most, and I'm pretty sure that Raymond's going to come on and cheer me up about this afterwards, but from some recent research, most of the new sort of methods, new processes that are being proposed for digital forensics in the cloud are using existing software, the kind of software that we use today. Now, I'm not sure if sarcasm translates quite well across borders, but maybe the existing software that we're using for digital forensics is just great. Maybe it's really good. Maybe it's the best we can do. I don't think so, and there are a couple of things that sort of make me believe that. So, forensic investigators, at least in law enforcement, are increasingly pushed for time. They don't have enough time to do their job. It takes forever and ever to process their cases, to look at the evidence. The caseloads are high, they're ever increasing. For the police nowadays, at least in the UK, whenever you're arrested, they'll probably seize your phone and send it off for forensic analysis. Not a great position to be in. And the backlogs are long. So presumably there's something that we could be doing better to help solve this. Secret next slide hand signal. Okay, so one of the particular problems in the cloud that I see is that the situation's already quite bad for forensics. We're looking for very little signal in a hell of a lot of noise. If we accept that, okay, yeah, fine, it's possible to conduct investigations in the cloud with the software that we have now, I don't fancy trawling through hundreds of terabytes of data. I certainly don't fancy trawling through hundreds of petabytes of data, especially when that information's distributed across many hosts in many different formats. It's unpleasant, at least. So there have been some solutions proposed to sort of resolve this. We can start looking at forensics within the cloud, which I'm not going to go into too much detail to avoid talking over the next talk. One thing I would also like to see is using cloud platforms, maybe for jurisdictional legal reasons, private cloud platforms, as a way of processing, extracting, analysing digital forensic evidence, moving away from the sort of centralised workstation model that we have into the sorts of distributed models that Rousseff was talking about, if I recall, in 2008, 2009. But we haven't really seen. These things haven't emerged. There aren't the commercial drivers. In many ways, I feel that, at least within digital forensics, something sort of contrary to what you were mentioning before, the research is ahead of what industry is doing. It's a very sort of risk-averse culture where we have these techniques, we have the training, people are happy with what they're doing. Let's not rock the boat, let's keep selling the training courses that we have. And I'm not going to mention company names through this because I haven't been cleared by the university lawyers, but let's just keep selling the products, make more money, small incremental improvements, but we really do need a radical shift in how we do things. Secret, next slide, hand signal. Right, so what can we do about this as academics? So this is less on the research side, more of us as trainers, people teaching digital forensics, people going out and doing training with police forces. Well, what I would like to see, and UCD in Dublin have done a lot of good work for this, is to empower forensic examiners and first responders to develop their own software. There are repetitive problems that they have. Sometimes only they have them. Sometimes they're unique, sort of on a per-case basis. So what can we be doing? What better training or what better support can we be providing them as academics or even as researchers to make that task, that automation, easier to do? And to an extent, law enforcement, at least in the northwest of England, is recognizing this. And they are starting to sort of form their own in-house development teams. This is problematic for the reason that I'm about to come on to next. In fact, I might scream a bit when we get to the next slide. But the rapidly changing platforms and formats that we're seeing in the cloud are going to accelerate this need for better digital forensics tooling. We're not there yet. We could be, and some of us are working very hard to achieve that. And hopefully we can be. Thank you. Right, so if we take a step back and sort of look at the larger context, where does this leave us? We have a legal expectation, a moral and ethical expectation that digital forensic practitioners are going to use the best tools for the job. We would expect that. I wouldn't want to be prosecuted, wouldn't want to be prosecuted at all, but I certainly wouldn't want to be prosecuted by evidence produced from processes that maybe aren't the best they could have been. But how do we say what is the best thing to do in any situation in digital forensics? Do we know? If we do, what criteria are we using to determine that anyway? Thank you. So my first point is that much like security software, certainly people say don't implement your own crypto algorithms, be very careful, use off-the-shelf things. It's very hard to get digital forensic software right. I don't believe people are aware of that, certainly not sufficiently aware of that as much as they should be. The visualization, sort of smooth enough. So I've hidden the names of the images that I was using for this test, again, to avoid any legal trouble. Also, this isn't published yet, not been through peer review, so take it with a grain of salt. So there are two tools here. The left two charts show the tool operating in its two different modes. The right chart shows the tool, another tool operating in the only mode it has. The white bits are errors that were consistent across all of the experiments, very controlled sort of environment. The black bits are the bits where they got it right. Now, there is a tool that is recommended by a lot of digital forensics websites, a lot of wikis sort of cover it, and it's really messing up. Nobody really knows about it. How do we address that? The final tool performed significantly better. Fair enough. If we go on to the next slide. The worst bit about this is that we've got to do digital forensics right, we've got to do it better, and it pretty much, in these situations where we're looking at data in motion, has to be right the first time. So this is the same tests, and the left two are the same for the other one. And they've completely trashed what it was trying to look at. Can't repeat this, can't do it again. And when we're looking at prosecuting people, when we're looking at making assertions from this information, that's, I think, at least, hopefully people agree, extremely important. So where could we go from here? A little bit of Zelda for you on the right there. So we have an opportunity now, if we get in early, to establish standardized environments and criteria for evaluating the effectiveness of digital forensic software in the cloud. What I don't want to see is more of the sort of qualitative checklists that we already have. I'm not entirely sure what they're asserting other than my tool does this thing, my tool does this too. Great, wonderful, but how well do you do it? We don't know. What I would like to establish are hard quantitative limits for the acceptability of digital forensic software that we use in the cloud. We need some way for people to say, in this situation, that tool outperforms that one. Would be very helpful to do that. I would also like to see approaches for evaluating the integrity of what we're doing on the fly, integrated into our procedures and our software. The ideal world is where every assertion that we make from digital evidence is accompanied by some sort of estimate of its veracity, of its accuracy. Ideally incorporating all the stages, so acquisition through to analysis and presentation. Virtualized infrastructure is great for this. It's wonderful because we can stop the world. Distributed systems gets a little bit more complex, but with a bit more research, there's got to be more that we can do. So here's where I get a little bit cynical about this, though. First of all, does it really matter? I'm well aware this is my hobby horse. I'd ask for a show of hands about how many people care, but from how that went this morning, I think I'd just probably start crying. So as yet, there's not been much appetite to investigate this much further, to ask ourselves, how well are we doing things? How can we improve them? Other forensic disciplines have nailed this. There are cases that are thrown out in courts because we discover that the rates of accuracy for certain types of DNA evidence are significantly lower than we expected. That introduces a reasonable amount of doubt, and people are acquitted for that. There has been some good work, in particular by Vommel and Freiling recently on this, though, so maybe the situation's improving a bit. The other thing is that, thank you. There have been cases in other disciplines where mistakes in software embedded controllers that have been used to produce evidence have resulted in judgments being overturned. There's a fairly famous case of a breathalyzer. They made the mistake of trying to breathalyze a software engineer, saying he was over the limit, arresting him, trying to prosecute him for this. He asked to see the source code of the device, and it was littered with bugs, it was littered with mistakes, and the ruling was found to be unsound. Try asking for the source code for the closed source digital forensics tool you're doing, I wonder. As a caveat to this, though, again, another reason to be depressed, juries can still be convinced that there are 10 bits in a byte. People have gone off for this, it's actually happened. Somebody that was downloading something they shouldn't have been, somebody did some maths based on, there's 10 bits in a byte, showed, he downloaded far less than the police are saying that he did. He couldn't possibly have done this. People are stupid. People are fairly uneducated about a lot of these things. How can we accurately convey that to them better? So I've just presented sort of two ideas that pretty much stand in opposition to each other, quite bad cognitive dissonance. I think we're reaching a world where forensic examiners should be empowered to create their own tools. But I also think that we need to improve the correctness, the validation of those tools. And what can we, as researchers, do about it? Well, ideally, researchers and open source developers, I think forensics should be more open source than sometimes it is. We need to strike a balance between those two things. So we need to provide safe, trustworthy infrastructure that people can use to develop their own forensics tools for their specific needs in the cloud. Thank you very much.
I think thank you, Brad, for giving some good issue in digital forensic and how it affects some people, especially in the court, and then using as evidence. This is very important, right? And we can ask question later. So let's go to the last speaker, Professor Lemon Chu from UC of South Australia, and he also doing a lot of research in digital forensics and a lot of things like police and something like that too, right? So I let you talk about that yourself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to put on record, I mean, that this conference is extremely well done, well organized, and I'm very extremely impressed with how well organized the conference is, and it's a privilege to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And good afternoon, everyone. Also, adding on to Brett's comment about digital forensic and versus other forensic science discipline, you'll notice that other forensic science disciplines such as blood forensic, DNA forensics, ballistics forensic, they have been around for a long time. Whereas digital forensic is what we usually call the newest kid on the block. We have been around for in the last 20 years. So 20 years is actually considered quite young as compared to the other branches of forensic science. And in fact, technologies for digital forensic is still evolving as we speak, because unlike other disciplines, digital forensic, we face a challenge because technologies evolve very fast. Whereas when it comes to blood forensics, DNA forensics, technology doesn't evolve as fast as ICT. So that is a challenge. And what also compounds the challenge when it comes to digital forensic is also evidence, the source of evidence. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, evidence will be in your laptops, in your computers. These days, mobile device. But increasingly so, it will be on the devices that you are wearing on you. For example, your Google glasses. How many of you actually have Google Watch? So evidence could actually be on your Google Watch. Or for those of you, the elderly who actually have a pacemaker on you, on the medical device that you wear on you, those could also be potential sources of evidence. And also Internet of Things, for example, smart TV, smart fridge, and so on. So the range of the sources of evidence is actually increasingly, is actually increasing as we speak. So in 5 years' time, from now, maybe the lights will be another source of evidence if you go to a crime scene, right? Next one, please. So when we started on crowd forensic 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, we were not able to find many papers in this space. In fact, we found a number of papers that actually highlight that, okay, because data is actually moving to the cloud, so it's going to be very increasing for law enforcement agencies as well as national security agencies. Why? It used to be a case, if I go to a crime scene, all I have to do is just to get a court warrant and actually seize the hard disk on the table, or seize the laptop, your mobile phones. But these days, even if I seize those devices, it's not going to help me because the data is no longer on the storage device. It's somewhere in the cloud. So the cloud can be in US, can be Hong Kong, Singapore, or any other country, or even Russia. Or even the data can actually be split between different data centers in different countries. So increasingly, we find that it's actually very challenging to collect evidence in a cloud environment because we do not know where they are. And what we found, okay, can you go back to, okay, thank you. What we found that for most of the, 4 years ago, there have been a number of forensic frameworks that have been proposed, have been published, and have been accepted and widely used by law enforcement agencies around the world. But all these frameworks, they actually have an assumption. The assumption is you actually have physical access to the storage device that actually holds the data. But we know that that assumption doesn't hold in the cloud because the storage device that you seize doesn't hold the data, but it can be the gatekeeper to the data because through it, you actually log into your, say, cloud storage accounts and so on. So next slide, please. Thank you. So a few years ago, 2 years ago, we actually proposed a new framework for cloud forensic. So this is actually the first cloud forensic framework proposed. Rather than reinventing the wheel, we actually integrate two very widely known or widely used frameworks. One of them is McCamish, proposed in 1999. Which is widely used in the Australian law enforcement circles. And the other one is proposed in 2003, I think, by the US National Institute of Standards and Technology. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through this 6 steps framework. Next slide, please. So we actually, to validate this framework, as what Kai was saying, we need to measure, we need to verify the utility of our framework. So how we do it, we actually measure it using, we actually undertake a number of case studies using Dropbox, SkyDrive, now it's known as OneDrive, Google Drive, as well as OwnCloud, which is not shown here. So I assume that all these cloud services will be quite familiar with you. So how many of you here do not use any of these? I learned from this morning as well, just like Ryan. So I'm sure many of you actually use at least one of these, whether it's Dropbox, SkyDrive, Google Drive, or OneDrive, right? On your mobile device, or on your laptops, or on your tablets. So what we found that is whether you use your mobile device, or tablets, or your computers to actually access any of these cloud services, whether it's using browsers or apps. If we actually have physical access to your device, we could actually recover a wide range of data remittance that can actually help us to build or to reconstruct the event, whether it's whether it's in the criminal investigation or in a civil litigation. So one of the things I need to point out is, whenever I tell people that I work in digital forensic, the first question is, do you work for the police? Well, I used to work for police. I was from Singapore, so I used to work in the Singapore police before I moved to Australia. But the answer is no. Digital forensic these days is not just for police, not for law enforcement. I'm sure in Thailand you have KPMG, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Some of them do have a digital forensic team, because this digital forensic, or also known as e-discovery or electronic discovery, is actually widely used in civil litigation. So digital forensic is not just used in criminal investigation. So I think that is a myth that we actually need to dispel. Sorry. So what we found, okay, you can go to the next slide. So what we found is that in addition to the range of data remittance that we could actually recover, most interestingly is we could actually recover the username and password. So once I have your username and password, I'm sure you know what I can do. Basically, I can log in as you and download all your data. And even if you try to use erasing software such as CC Cleaner or Eraser, we could also recover the username and password in many cases in plain text, or even other remittance of data, for example, with the associate timestamp, as in where you actually log in, geolocation, if you have geolocation activated and so on. So your mobile device or your client devices are actually a rich source of information, even though your data is stored in the cloud. So that's actually one entry point. So even though the storage device these days does not contain the data itself, but that's fine, because we could actually recover data if we have access to your device. Next slide, please. Thank you. So since we published the book last year, we have also looked at mobile Android device forensics. And we found that most of the mobile device forensic work in the literature do not actually have a framework. Through our discussion with our stakeholders in law enforcement, and again, back to Kai's point about bridging research and practice. So in this case, our research is very applied. We are our customer here in this case is mostly digital forensic practitioners and mostly in governments, but as well as private sectors. So we had a very long conversation with them, and what they found useful is, if there is a step-by-step guide, this is something that they can actually present in the court of law. Because, okay, once you finish the digital forensic examination, what's next? What is going to happen to the evidence? For example, in a criminal investigation or in a civil litigation. You have to present this, you have to stand out in court, appear as an expert witness, to explain to the judge and the jury what you have found, what are the implications. So this stage presentation is actually, usually, most lay people will not actually associate this with digital forensic, but this is actually part of the digital forensic process, to actually be able to explain, to articulate your findings in the court of law as an expert witness. So what they found is, having a process such as this is very helpful to them when in conducting a step-by-step, a systematic forensic examination, as well as using this as a basis in their report. Next slide, please. So again, we demonstrated the utility of this framework using a number of apps: Dropbox, OneDrive, Box, OwnCloud, Evernote, OneNote, and UPM, which is a Universal Password Manager. And again, not surprisingly, we found that we were actually able to forensically recover, in a forensically sound manner in this case, data remittance that could actually point, or that could actually help us to reconstruct the whole event, even if some of the data has been deleted. And again, it really depends on how recent the data was deleted. If it was deleted 2 years ago, of course, we are not able to recover it. But it's quite recent, as recent as 6 months, there are chances are we could still recover them. Again, we could also recover the authentication tokens. Previously, these services, they use username and password, but these days they moved to using authentication tokens. Again, we could actually intercept and recover the authentication token as well as the refresh tokens. So basically, we were able to, once we were able to intercept the authentication tokens and the refresh tokens, we could again log in as the user and download all the data, 24/7, wherever we are. Thank you. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. And besides cloud apps, we also conduct a number of other apps forensic. So one of the most recent app forensic is actually on dating apps. I'm not going to ask who use dating apps here, but I'm sure you know that the information that you share on dating apps will be information that you would not normally share on Facebook, for example, or share on Google Maps or your email or with your friends, right? For example, through this Google Map, through these dating apps, we actually studied, I think, 9 or 10 the most popular dating apps in Google Play Store. We found that most of these apps are actually not designed with security in mind. So if I have access to your device, in this research, we only work on physical access. But based on our previous work, we could actually do a remote exploitation and gain access to your device even remotely. But this is not the focus of this work. So once we have access to your device, we could actually recover a fair bit of information about who you are. For example, whether you are straight or otherwise, whether you have a certain preference when it comes to dating or individuals. So as you can imagine, some of this information can be very damaging, especially to people in high positions. I don't think they will want this type of information to be leaked to the public. And of course, this research actually caught the attention of media. As you can see, these are some examples. Next slide, please. And most of the research we have found so far, when it comes to forensic, again, the typical assumption, even in our crime analysis, is we actually have physical access to your device. But in the cloud, what if we do not have physical access to your device? For example, it's not just a cloud. For example, in terms of IoT or in terms of an oil grid, where the SCADA system or the system is actually somewhere in the ocean, where it's very expensive or very costly to fly someone, a forensic practitioner, all the way to the oil rig just to collect evidence. But that device is actually connected to the corporate network. What can we do? Can we actually collect evidence in a more cost-effective way, and more importantly, in a forensically sound manner? The challenge here we face when you're trying to bridge research and practice is forensically sound. If you want to use the evidence in the court of law, it has to be forensically sound. That's why we have to do things perfect. And as what Brett said, for forensic software, we have to make sure that we get it right. Because if we get it wrong, the evidence may not be abysmal in court. And at the same time, we do have a moral application. I don't think we want to be sending the wrong person to jail. Yeah. Right. So for forensic software, unlike security software, there is a higher bar in a sense, because we have to make sure that we get it right. Otherwise, an innocent person could be sent to jail just because of the software. So that is an additional challenge for us. So in this work, we actually propose a method. And again, we use VMware vCloud as a case study to demonstrate that we could actually recover a certain range of evidence from a cloud remotely. But the question is, this is actually quite interesting. The thing is, okay, for example, if you use this tool, if you use our tool to collect evidence remotely from a cloud, without the user's consent. Now, it's not a technical question, it's more of a legal question. Okay, for example, if I'm a suspect, say Ryan is a law enforcement agency here. So Ryan managed to recover my username and password through his forensic investigation. And he come to me and say, Raymond, I want you to give me permission to use the username and password to collect the evidence. I said, no. I refuse to deny. I said, you can put me in jail, that's fine. I'm not going to cooperate with you. But Ryan, go ahead and access my cloud accounts using the username and password, using this technique. So at some stage, I'm acquitted of this crime. I went back to my country. Say, for example, this cloud storage is hosted in Russia. And in Russia, I actually lodged a civil suit against Ryan. I say, this officer, without my consent, access my credentials, access my account using credentials obtained by means they are not legal. Because in this case, it becomes unauthorized access. The question is, does the law that Ryan works in, for example, New Zealand or Thailand, actually covers him? It may cover him in New Zealand and Thailand, that's fine. But if he ever steps foot in Russia, will he ever get arrested? So that is the legal question. Even though in terms of technology, we can do it, but the question is, legally, is he covered? He may be covered if he's still working for the police, but what if he resigns, become a private citizen, and travels to Russia? So will he still be covered? So that is a question. So this is the legal gray area in this sense. So when it comes to forensic, it's actually interdisciplinary. It's not just computer science or engineering. There is a lot of other disciplines involved as well, for example, legal, criminology, and so on. Next slide, please. So late last year, we actually filed an Australian provisional patent, and we are actually in the process of commercializing this product. So our aim is actually to design a system to have a system that's designed by forensic and security experts, a one-off design, but it can be used by an intelligent IT expert without forensic training or without security training. Why do you need to do that? Because, first of all, there is a shortage of forensic experts. And forensic experts usually cost much more than an IT administrator, right? So this, I mean, the benefit to the organization, the potential clients is this will be a cost saving in the long run, because it actually allows them to deploy the solution and collect evidence from wherever they are at their company, without having a forensic expert. All they have to do is just a one-off design by a forensic expert. So this is something that we have just started, so it's still a long way. So next slide, please. Okay. And I'm sure I don't think you need any further convincing that it's always a rat race when it comes to crime. At some stage, the good guys are. In fact, we have seen in a number of cases in Australia and some other countries where serious and organized criminals, they actually use securely configured phones, including black phones and BlackBerries, to communicate for work purposes. Because they know that law enforcement have a hard time trying to crack those devices and trying to obtain evidence because they use very strong encryption. So every technology has dual usage. Okay, next slide, please. And moving on to big data, I think Brett also has mentioned about the challenges when it comes to, there's a lot of backlogs for additional forensic labs, even in advanced countries like Australia, US, UK, and so on. Because just imagine 5 years ago, your hard disk space would be in terms of megabyte or gigabyte, but these days you're talking about terabytes. The challenge here is the technologies that is used to process this data collection for forensic purposes has not kept pace with the growth in the storage size. For example, when it comes to digital forensic, we do not work on the original copy. We have to make a forensic copy before we can do any analysis. But trying to make a bit-for-bit copy is actually very time-consuming. It can take you hours just to make a forensic image of, say, a 1 terabyte hard disk, or maybe even one or 2 days, depending on how much data you have on it. So big forensic data, I'm sure many of you who have heard of big data and big data analytics, but big forensic data is something that's less heard of. But big forensic data, to me, is actually a subset of big data. So this is, again, a challenge that's facing law enforcement agencies, as well as other forensic practitioners. Next slide, please. So just last year, we actually published a paper where we actually reviewed publications in the last 15 years about solutions in this space. About solutions in artificial intelligence, solutions in data mining, data reduction, triage, and other forensic literature on what are the applications that we can have, or what are the potential solutions that actually allow us to address these big forensic data issues. What we found that is, even though after 15 or more years of research, there are still many research gaps that have not been addressed, even though they may have been identified in the last few years, but they have not been addressed. So in this work, we actually propose a data reduction process that actually allows us to collect the data and allows real-time triage of the evidence in real-time, real-time triage of evidence. And using, for this research, we actually use 2 data sets. One of the data sets is a research data set from US Postgraduate Naval School by Professor Simpson of Inca. The second data set is actually a real-world data set. It's from South Australian Police, because my PhD student is actually a full-time forensic expert at South Australian Police. So we actually used these 2 data sets. Applying our technique, we could actually reduce the original size of the data to less than 1%. I think in one of our cases, 0.096%. So this is a significant cost saving just by using data reduction. Because basically, once you are able to use this data reduction and reduce all this data in real time to such a small size, it actually allows you to do a real-time triage. Not just in forensic investigation, but also in terms of incident response. Because in incident response, you want to be able to identify the source of an attack as soon as you can, so that you can plug the hole. So next slide, please. And again, we have also filed a provisional patent on this as well. So this is also going to be part of our first solution. So it will be an integrated solution. And this is a second data set where we actually use a different data set from South Australian Police. And again, we managed to reduce the original subset to 0.206%. of the original size. So this, in fact, is very promising. In fact, this solution is currently being trialed at South Australian Police. So we have, I think it's been trialed for the last 3 months. So we are hoping to have this as a 6-month process. And from there, we actually want to collect some sort of statistics to actually prove the utility of or the effectiveness of this process. So again, in this case, we are still trying to bridge research and practice, but it's not as easy as we hope. So hopefully the audience or my fellow panel members can actually enlighten me on how to do it better. Next one, please. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I think Kai almost run out of time. but I have one quick question, probably I would like to have short answer to. Okay, I think you have brought something that very interesting issue on from research to business. So I would like to ask each speaker for what would be the most important key factor. You can give 1 or 2 key factor that would be make your project from research and can go to business or commercialize. I think one thing that most researchers would like to do is when they produce something, they put a lot of effort, money, people, a lot of resource, and they want that product or the output or something out to be used by some people. They don't want to putting on the shelf, right? Actually, that's what I think most researchers would dream of, this kind of thing. So I would like to see quick answer for key factor, the most key factor for this.
Thank you. That's a very good question. My background and interest is in culture, security culture. So basically, I'm interested in people and what makes people tick and work together or not. And what I see from the outside of the academic research environment is that the gap between these two areas, so research and business, comes a lot from not understanding that, number one, we have different cultures, and number two, how those cultures differs. So, for example, Brett's example here, which I don't recall exactly, but you have a challenge having businesses change their way of doing forensics. From my perspective, that makes perfect business sense. Why? Because we don't need anything better as long as we have something working. That is a big problem for business. But as a researcher, understanding the motivation behind that kind of decision is important so that you can learn how to kind of go around that and help businesses understand why it is important to change your perspective.
Thank you for your answer. Next, Ryan, can you? Because I believe you have some example, right?
Yeah, I need to keep it short too. Yeah, so the key, if I'm coming from a researcher point of view, the key thing is to be sensitive. Yeah, sensitive to the problems everyone is facing or yourself is facing. So if you face this problem every day, you need to know that it's a problem in the first place, and you want to think of a solution for that problem. Yeah, so that's things like if you see a lot of people crossing the road and there's a lot of accidents, and the people who are managing the roads will want to build an overhead bridge or something, or a traffic light that solves the problem. So sensitivity to the problems out there. So the real life example I can give you is when I first started my job in Hewlett-Packard Labs, my boss told me one thing: think about what are the problems that cloud users are going to face in 5 years' time. Yeah. So I went to ask businessmen, Yeah, so the businessman came and tell me, we don't trust you. Yeah, if you put our data, our data into your cloud, we don't trust you. So I go back and think, well, how do I address the trust? So in the end, we started a project in HP Labs called Trust Cloud. And Trust Cloud's technology eventually translated into ArcSight technologies. Yeah.
Thank you. Brett, can you share some experience?
Yeah, a short answer, yes, no, maybe. I'm pretty convinced at this point that nobody's ever going to give me money for the work that I'm doing, and that's fine, you know, that's okay, but I think if we are, picking up some of Kai's point, going to engage with law enforcement agencies, engage with commercial providers of digital forensic products, maybe the way that I framed the discussion today, it definitely probably isn't the way to do it. There's probably a more conciliatory approach, maybe with more bearing in mind of this is how you can push your competitors out of the market or trying to make the business case for doing things better. So definitely there is, at least in terms of some of this empirical work, too much distance between what we're trying to do as researchers and what they are trying to do as people that just want to sell some products and make some money and then make more money from the training. Cheers.
Raymond?
Thank you. I totally agree with my panelists' comments. In fact, I will add on, you have to be very thick-skinned because in most cases, you might be hard-calling businesses and trying to understand and trying to get them to even to speak to you to understand their needs. Because if they do not speak to you, if there's no open communication, you will not be able to understand their needs. But there is also a limitation in this approach in the sense that even though they might speak to you, but they're telling you the problems that they're facing now. For example, if the founders of Google actually speak to this businessman before they found Google, they might never have started Google. So in this sense, you must have the ability to be able to identify challenges, to identify opportunities. So one of the ways is actually, instead of seeing the problem as a challenge, see it as an opportunity. Think about, okay, if this is a problem that someone is facing, how can I do it better? How can I do it in a more cost-effective manner? So that's it.
Yeah. If we may have like 1 minute, if there is a question from the floor, from audience. Okay. Since like we late around 5 minutes already, so thank you every speaker here, and then my job finish here, and then we can have a break for 15 minutes, and then we come back for the next session. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the second session of Digital Research Track. Okay. So today we're going to start with the topic of securing cloud in different domains. Okay. So my name is Apilat, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Okay. I assume that everyone knows how important security is to the cloud. Okay. Otherwise, you won't be here. Well, if you don't think so, too late because you're here anyway. Now, in this session, we have 4 speakers who actually work in different domains, but they are all working related to cloud security. Okay. So they'll present in order that you are given into the booklet, okay, in the proceeding. The first presenter will be Dr. Kunwadi Sipanikunchai from NECTEC. Okay. She will give a talk on healthcare data privacy on the cloud. The second presenter, Dr. Jonathan Oliver from Trend Micro. He will give a talk on using big data to identify social network abuse. Okay. The third will be Dr. Sivadon Chaisari from University of Waikato, New Zealand. Okay. The title of his presentation will be Applying Cyber Insurance to hedge against cyber risk in the cloud. And the final presenter is John Yo from CSA. Okay. And the title of his talk, okay. Well, actually, I don't have that. Sorry, but here get it. Okay. So let me spend some time introduce our first speaker. Okay. So Dr. Kunwadi is a head of healthcare system and data analysis research at NECTEC Thailand. Okay, she has been working in healthcare for quite some time. Okay, and before this, she was at TJ Watson Lab. Okay, and she's working on the challenge of migration into cloud and virtualized environment. Today, she will share some of her experience from building healthcare cloud, okay, and how they make the data on the cloud private in her talk, titled Healthcare Data Privacy on the Cloud. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Gunwadi.
Okay, so I'm going to talk today about healthcare data privacy on the cloud, and as kind of the subtitle of the talk, really what I'm going to go through is how we can use a public cloud. How we can use a public cloud for patient health records. Okay, so those are two conflicting ideas often, right? Patient health records, we think of privacy as one of the biggest challenges. And public clouds, are public clouds shared by many different users. And so today I'm going to walk you through kind of the thought process of, more from a practical approach. If you're really going to use the public cloud to store private data, what do you have to think about? What are the issues you have to kind of figure out before you actually go ahead with the implementation? Okay. So, and I have to tell you a little bit, my background for, since I did my PhD research all the way through, from grad school and, working for many years now has really been more on the infrastructure side. So, traditional systems, networking, and also cloud computing. And for the past 5 years, I've kind of gone up the layers into looking at big data. And so my talk today will come from both sides. Okay, so you'll see sort of the infrastructure side as well as kind of if you're a user of cloud and you want to use data, what you have to think about. Okay, so down at the bottom, okay, are going to provide their data into this exchange, and what this will provide for users who are primarily doctors, nurses, is an integrated view of patient records. Okay, so think about you go to a hospital. Data gets generated about your visit, what medications you took, what your lab results are, and all that gets kind of funneled into the system. And users of the system, doctors at hospitals, can get access to your records. So they can see, if you went to different hospitals, what kind of treatments you received. And this is all good in terms of, in the healthcare domain, because what you're getting is a good view of your patient history, and doctors can treat you according to that, right? So it seems to be very useful. Now what we were doing was doing the integration of the data as well as building software as a service on top of that data. So we were looking at, okay, if we're going to build software to view the patient records, to do analytics on the patient data, and we wanted to do this in a scalable and kind of quick to deployment way, the cloud seems to be kind of a good option. So we were exploring, okay, is the cloud quite a good match for this? And there's a lot of motivation for why you want to use a cloud. Okay, and you've probably seen lots of motivations like this. Primarily from our perspective, what we wanted was low barrier to deployment. You go off, use your credit card, pay a small amount of money, you get, your computing and storage resources. Furthermore, the cloud offers many easier ways to implement things. For example, elasticity, auto-scaling, high availability, automated backups. Those are all the things that we wanted, as well as data durability, replicas of data, and also future-proofing, the infrastructure, so we didn't have to go through a full hardware investment. But there were also some showstoppers, and the most popular question we get is, will the data be private? If we put patient data on the cloud, will the data be private? And this is going to be the main focus of my talk. And before I go on to the main focus, really, the caveats for Thailand, using the cloud, it's not always a win-win situation. So let me just kind of preface that at the end, we did not go with a public cloud offering. What we ended up doing was a completely different approach, and I'll get to it if we have time. But the reason we didn't go to that was not because of security, but because, first of all, the location of the data matters because this is government data. Legal regulations require that it has to be in the country, so we can't use any of the public clouds that are actually offered outside the country. And at that time in 2011, there were no providers inside Thailand. Plus, number two, the cost is also an issue. Okay, so network, we all know, network performance. If you go outside the country, it's kind of, you know, a big performance hit. And also, cost is also a main issue. And if you look at the cost numbers, it didn't make sense at that time. Actually, building out our own infrastructure in Thailand was actually the better choice. Now, for the rest of the talk, I'll focus on privacy. And really, I want to make some assumptions that the cloud provider is doing its best job at providing infrastructure security, so we're not going to look at those issues. And on the application side, we're also implementing the best practices in application security, so we're not looking at those issues. Now, my user's worst nightmare is really, you know, if you put data on the cloud, there are two nightmares I'm going to talk about. Nightmare number one is if I put patient data on the cloud and, you know, you make changes to it, you delete it, does it really get deleted? And, you know, there's a well-documented case for Amazon EBS where you write stuff to Amazon storage and you delete it and you give that, you know, EBS block, which is some storage block, to someone else, they can recover the data. So, well, that is a well-documented case. You know, you really, once you hear about it, you think, well, can you ever trust any cloud provider? And that's really true, but there are ways to get around this. You have to do, you know, with actual deletion of data, you need to do really secure deletes. And, you know, in the previous talk, someone talked about how you can still partially recover things from secure deletes, so you really have to be careful about how you delete data. Another thing is, okay, secure delete is kind of a well-known solution. What about deletions that happen that are done by the cloud provider side? Not so much I do the deletion, but the cloud provider does the deletion. For example, you know, if the instances that are running my software actually get auto-scaled and then they get dropped, get reduced, or they crash, you know, what happens to that state in between? And so all of this points to one very basic solution, which is what I need to do really is encrypt my data. So that happens to be, you know, kind of the only solution. And really, if you think about other breaches, possible breaches on the cloud, and these are also well-documented breaches, right, which I won't go through, but they all point to data encryption. So now we think about, okay, encryption we know well, encryption we've done, but encryption isn't really that simple. Now, if you really think about how you're going to implement this, you're going to discover searches over encrypted data is still an issue because, you know, if you're doing databases that are encrypted, doing secure search is a big research challenge, as, you know, speakers from the previous talk also mentioned. So I'm not going to go into possible solutions there, but you can see that it's a rich area to explore. Also, key management, huge issue. Okay, and you don't want key management to be done on the cloud because if you're not trusting the cloud with clear text data to begin with, I don't know if, you know, you can trust to have your key management implemented by the cloud. So often what you would prefer is off-premises, off-the-cloud implementation, which now starts to get complicated, right? And then another thing is you have to manage user access to the data. And what I mean here is things like being able to decrypt the data. And if you're going to decrypt data and you decrypt on the cloud, you've pretty much, you know, you've defeated the purpose of having encrypted data on the cloud to begin with. So then that starts to be kind of an off-cloud action that you have to take as well. And it all points down, again, to a possible solution, which is, well, you start to have these off-cloud components that you need to have available. And, okay, it's a nightmare. Now, let me just show you implications of off-cloud encryption. What you end up doing is, in the picture on the left-hand side, you have storage that you can have on the cloud, but any manipulations of the data, encryption or decryption, has to happen off-cloud. And if you do that, that means you have to have a separate infrastructure that will perform those tasks for you. And then you've kind of lost the benefit of cloud auto-scaling, high availability, automated backups once you move off the cloud, because then you have to implement those things yourself, and you're not getting the operational efficiencies that you were expecting to have when you started using the cloud. And so let me just summarize, okay? And I don't have solutions here, okay? I'm raising a question. If we're gonna have encrypted data on the cloud, and assuming the research works for searching over encrypted data, assuming the research works for all those algorithms for how you add and you sum up the encrypted data, assuming all that works, you're still left with infrastructure that you have to implement decryption and encryption before you get to the cloud. You need to have infrastructure that is off the cloud for implementing key management. And when that happens, you start to have infrastructure, a bulk of it, off the cloud. And really, you're using the cloud just for storing the data. You still get the benefits of storing data on the cloud, in terms of operational efficiency, but you start to have to maintain additional things off cloud. And so when you start to lose the benefits, really, you're left with kind of, at the end, if you really want to get the benefits of auto-scaling, of replicas, of automated backups, you end up having to implement that either in a private cloud, you're on your own, or using some kind of hybrid. So there's new solutions in the space to do kind of what are called encryption gateways, so to encrypt the data before you get to the cloud. So you start to see these solutions in the space, and really it's because of this big challenge of, if you want to store stuff on the cloud, you want it to be private, the only option for you is to encrypt it before it gets there. And so, this rich space of encryption gateways and key management is now one of kind of the new areas where you're going to see a lot of companies actually offer solutions. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
Okay. Thank you for a very interesting talk and a nice question to add. Before we take the question from the general public, I think we, based on the last session, we deferred to the end. So I think we're going to keep that tradition for this session as well. So let's go to the next speaker, Jonathan Oliver. He's a senior architect from 10 Micro. He's actually holds a PhD in machine learning using information theoretic techniques. Okay. He has worked as a data mining and machine learning consultant in Silicon Valley for the last 12 years. He worked in computer security. And today, he will talk in using big data to identify social network abuse. Okay, so he will discuss how social networks are being abused and the issues of why traditional security solutions may be ineffective. And so, without further ado, Jonathan.
Thank you. So today, I'll be talking about social network security and abuse of social networks. I think this area is particularly relevant to the CSA and this forum. People spend a lot of time in social networks. It's one of their trusted environments. And for some people, it's almost their primary access to the internet and a very common place to interact either personally or in the work environment. They trust them. Click-through rates in social networks are very, very high. Social networks, they reside in the cloud. They have many of the same properties and security problems that cloud applications have. And traditional security is either ineffective or has limitations for this type of area. So that's why I'm here today. And let's investigate this. Oops, jump forwards. On-premise security, completely ineffective. Many of the URLs that are coming in through the users, this is what we need to protect. And they're all trusted. Traditional security methods, like honeypots, are completely ineffective. In social networks, nearly all the messages go from one legitimate user to another legitimate user. So, and the abuse involves compromising a user. Honeypots completely don't work in that environment. Similarly, sandboxes typically don't work. Many of the abuses, I'll point to some, have some form of social engineering. They got a message from a friend, they click on it, they take some action within the social network. Sandboxes have nothing to say. Similarly, detecting drive-by downloads. So there, I've quickly gone through some of the key methods used by security companies, and they're all completely ineffective for the forms of abuse that I'm about to show you. We'll go through some quick examples. So here's some spam. It's just one of the typical threats. Well, I wouldn't really call it a threat, it's an irritation. Unless your account was the account that was compromised and start spamming. Here's another case. This arrived to me just the other day, so I had to put it in. I looked up this person. I did a reverse image search on the profile picture. They happened to be a billionaire. And they wanted to link to me, which was absolutely fascinating. I'm sure I'm one of the only people who did a reverse image search and looked up the user. Many other people will have just accepted the link. They accept things from social networks at face value because the only way this person could contact me is through one of my trusted friends. I accepted because I'm a security researcher, and lo and behold, they wanted to start sharing their money with me. This is a form of the those scams, that money sharing scams that often came from Nigeria, but also come from many other places. And I was just collecting this so I could see it. The point here, most traditional scams and threats are migrating to some form that operates in social networks. This is a scheme that runs on Facebook. It's very technically elegant. It involves users getting compromised through browser extensions and sophisticated JavaScript tricks. Once you're infected, you send a message to all your friends with an enticing clip to a video or something compelling that's newsworthy. You just got a message from your friend, you click on it, and you infect yourself. And then you send to all your friends. This is a large concern, this particular scheme, to Facebook. Another scam, very common, they'll offer you followers, either for a small fee or something. You accept it. Once you've got the followers, then in the fine print, often they say that they want access to your social network credentials or permission over your profile, and you'll send to all your friends similar advertisements that they can get followers. So it's another viral scheme. This is particularly interesting. This was on Twitter. This is a phishing scam. You send messages to all your friends. I've shown it from the perspective here of a victim who sent messages to all their friends. But each one of their friends only got one message from a friend, something along the lines, "Hello, L, did you really send this?" with a link. It's a shortened URL. You click on it. At that point, it says, your session is suspended. You've got to log in again. Well, this is not surprising on social networks. You're operating in the cloud. You clicked on something. This is particularly interesting phishing. The phishing occurs on the cloud environment where you expect it to be. So this tricks many, many users and was getting the order of 20,000 users per day, losing their Twitter credentials. In those last three schemes, we saw this sort of viral cycle where each one of them was operating in the cloud beyond the reach of traditional security, where people, you'd need an initial victim, would send messages to their friends, either compromise or get credentials. Then some of those users would be monetized, and some of those users would be used to further the scheme. So they can operate in the cloud in this viral environment with a self-perpetuating scheme that can get many, many users. And it's all avoiding all of those techniques that I described. So let's start discussing how we can attack this with big data. Indeed, I'll quickly start here. This was a particularly innovative scheme. It came out of collaboration with a university, so I like it very much that it is in that nice crossover point between university research and real life application in that sweet spot where I think often the best things occur in security. It was a machine learning approach. I won't go into the details. They're called finite state automata, and it involved the machine learning of them. It was wonderfully effective, and at the time responsible disclosure was then sent to Twitter, and I hope that contributed to helping shutting down the scheme. Certainly Twitter took this scheme very seriously and put a lot of effort into shutting it down. I hope this contributed, but I don't know for sure. I'll mention another scheme coming out of big data. Again, coming out of collaboration with universities. This is quite a general scheme. And this is the type of situation where I see real hope, and in large part my talk is a call to action for this sort of research. On the left-hand side, we have a number of users that may have been compromised or credentials taken over. Typically, and this is, by that I mean nearly always, bad actors on the internet will use a round-robin approach. That is, they will send one message to one person, with one bad domain or one bad link, and then they'll send to the next and the next and the next. And indeed, bad actors have a very good reason for using round robins. They use it in spam, they use it in phishing, they use it all the time. It minimises the effect of blacklisting. It minimises the effect of security shutting it down. So there's very strong reasons why they're using round robins, and indeed, big data can detect. It's called the by-click algorithm. We don't need to go into that now, but there are indeed techniques to find that. Because it's in the cloud, that can be detected. It's one of the advantages of working in the cloud, where big data is one of our primary tools. So I shall conclude there. What we see is that these cloud environments with social networks are beyond traditional security. And so I'm here as a part of a call to action from the Cloud Security Alliance that calling for both academics and people in organisations and in vendors that we need more activity and research here. Indeed, Trend Micro is investing in this area, and it's an area where I see the CSA and members here present need to research and consider the consequences. So that's the end of my
projects, and currently he is joined 2 projects funded by MBIE and Ethernet NC to conduct survey in New Zealanders' mobile internet security awareness. So for today, he will present a talk on applying cyber insurance to hedge against cyber risks in the cloud. So he will talk about the unforeseen threats that can result in loss of data and the expensive costs that endure. So please.
Thank you. May I stand up? Sorry. Yeah, I'm fat. So yeah, sorry, John. Yeah, when I sit, I cannot speak loud. Yeah. Okay. I have just less than 10 slides. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Mahidol, Dr. Sasungwan, and also CSA for inviting me to this awesome conference. Yeah, that's very splendid conference I've attended, I could say. Yeah. Today I'm going to discuss with you, again I use the term discuss because I just don't want to talk, okay, but discuss why we need insurance, okay. Why we need insurance? Again, I'm a researcher, I'm not the one who will sell you insurance package, okay. I think that 10 years ago, or maybe not 10 years ago, now today, almost every day or every week, you might get a call from sales, right? Insurance sales. Yeah, are you interested in health insurance? Right? Something like this. Yeah, quite often. Yeah, me too. I got this kind of call quite often. Yeah, but why we need to have insurance? Okay, absolutely, insurance is. Sorry, I think I skipped something. Okay, insurance can help you transfer the risk of a loss or liabilities from one, for example, from ourselves to someone else or a company, another company, sorry. Yep, that's the idea of insurance, okay? What will be, right? What will be, like, if you got accidents, car accidents, absolutely you cannot, you know, use time machine and go back to the place before the accident happened, okay? So we need something that can help you transfer this kind of risk, right? And insurance can help you to hedge against uncertain loss. Okay, just for example, car insurance could cover first-party risk and third-party risk. What is first-party risk? For example, you got someone crashed your car, right? And your car got damaged. Okay, the first party risk could help you fix the problem, okay? And the third party risk, you might catch someone, right? And your insurance package could help you to help your victim, okay, fix the car. Yeah, that's the idea, very simple, okay? It helps you whenever you have financial problem, right? Okay, let me go faster. And I want to say that in the cloud, not just in the cloud actually, for any digital access, we have cyber insurance. Anyone here have ever heard cyber insurance before? One you think is more dangerous for you, no right or wrong, okay? Which one you think, yeah, for yourself? Who think data loss is more expensive? Okay, data leakage? Okay, yeah, more data leakage, yeah. Yes, I agree with you, both of you actually. It depends actually. It depends on the type of data you lost. For example, if let's say, I do research on, let's say, weather prediction. So I capture temperature of the weather day by day, okay? If this kind of data leak, I could say that it's not a big issue, right? But whenever my password lost, even if the password is hashed or encrypted, yep. Do you think it's safe? Okay. Yeah, I could say somehow it's safe, okay, it's encrypted, but somehow it might not be safe, okay? Especially for customers, if credit card information, even encrypted, okay, lost or leaked, yep, it's very dangerous. Okay, let me move to the next item. Okay, software destruction, for example, someone, change the bit from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 in your binary program. Absolutely, your program might not work, correctly. Okay, this is disruption, for example, due to network disruption or power disruption. It could be possible, right? Denial of service and losses due to terrorist acts or even protest, okay? This kind of risk could happen to our cloud data. For the providers as well, I could say that providers also scale all of these lists, right? Not just the consumers. Okay. So we have this question, protection enough, okay, for the cloud to secure our data, our application hosted in the cloud, okay? All the protections we have, for example, we can apply encryption, okay, with, large size of key, of over 4,000 bits of key to secure your data, okay? Or you use anti-malware to, scan the virus or any kind of malicious code, okay? Or you use firewalls, intrusion detection system, okay? You use all of these, okay, install or deploy in the cloud, help your data. I could say, I expect that cloud providers, most of the cloud providers also apply these mechanisms to secure your data as well. But are you ensured that all of these services can save your data? Yep. Can you ensure? Can you ensure? Yep. Yeah, it's the same as when, you got car accident. Yep. We don't know what will happen in the future, right? That's why we need car insurance, okay? And SLA or service level agreement enough to secure your data? Enough? Good question, or not? Yeah. SLA, I could say most SLA defined by cloud providers. Okay. Usually, again, I use the term, I use sentence, SLA are defined by cloud providers, not by, consumers, or not by both sides. Usually, cloud providers set the SLAs for you, and usually, you cannot change the SLA. You even cannot negotiate the SLA as well, right? So if you want the cloud providers to save your data, say, okay, let me give example. Say you want the cloud providers to commit no loss of data, no leakage of data. Is it possible to do that? Even the cloud provider say, yes, I can do that for you, but in real situation, absolutely the cloud provider cannot 100% guarantee that the data will not be leaked or lost. Okay, that's why we need cyber insurance, okay, to transfer losses of data and liabilities to insurers, okay, to insurance company, okay, and we have some example of insurance companies such as AIG, okay, or Hiscox. Just an example, okay? And this kind of cyber insurance could cover first and third party lists as well, same as car insurance. Very interesting. Okay, this picture is showing you what kind of lists which are, mostly scared by each business domain. Okay, you can see that sorry, my eyes are not very good. For example, banking companies or finance business company are very scared all of the threats, right? All of the threats. Because if this threat, happen, could, damage your data, the company's data, sorry, and also damage the reputation of the company. Okay, let me show you some, cost of cyber insurance, okay? I could say that it's not easy for the consumers or customer to know how the insurer set the premium, okay? It's not easy, okay? It's asymmetric information. No insurance company want to, disclose this kind of formulation, how to calculate premium and limit, okay? But I can say that, okay, for the high sensitive data, for example, healthcare, okay, healthcare information like EHR, electronic health record, okay, is really expensive, right? Okay, it's very, very expensive. This kind of data is very expensive. That's the reason why, you know, the premium is expensive as well. But for this, just EHR. Luckily, right now, EHR or health record are what we call, you know, anonymized, right? Yep. Okay, and okay, for healthcare, SA as a software service provider, you know, need to pay more, 1.5 million to get the 30K limit. Okay, sorry, I think I switched something wrong. I put data wrong. The second column must be limit, okay? Sorry, so the third column must be limit, and the last column must be premium, okay? Right. Oh, it's correct already. Yeah, it's correct. Okay, sorry. Why what I just said? Okay. Okay. Yeah, this data I got from this website. Okay. I might put some data wrong. Yeah, but by the way, you can find more information from this website. It shows you some information that this website collected. Okay. Yep. Let me show you next. Okay. Last slide. Okay. I give you some open questions. Okay, the first one, do cloud providers need to purchase cyber insurance for us? Right? We are customers. Why we need to purchase cyber insurance? The cloud providers must purchase. Okay, is this true? Okay, that's the first question. The next one, do you need cyber insurance for yourself? Okay, that means, okay, suppose the cloud providers cannot afford the cyber insurance, okay, that means their customers themselves need to take care of themselves, take care of their data. Okay, next, providers, is it possible that providers can include optional cyber insurance? It's same as when you purchase air ticket, okay? The air company might, airline company might ask you, do you want insurance, okay, life insurance, okay, when you travel, okay? This is my question, is it possible that the cloud provider someday will include this kind of option for you, okay? And the last one, can we negotiate our SLA? I could say that it's challenging question, this one. Okay, that's all for my talk. Thank you.
And for our last presenter, John Yo from CSA. John is a senior researcher analyst at CSA for the past 5 years, helping building the organization research portfolio. And as a research analyst, he worked within the research working group, certification teams, and strategic partnership worldwide. Okay. He has co-authored and managed studies on cloud adoption, shadow IT, security on drone, and he sits on multiple industrial advisory bodies. Okay. And sorry for my earlier blunder, but today, John, he will give a talk titled, Building Security Through Community. Okay. This talk discusses the effect of community research on best practice and how the contributions of SMEs lead to the development and advancement of individuals changing the culture of security in business. John, thank you.
Yeah, sorry to give you such a long description. I think I told a few people that I was going to talk about IoT security, but it seemed kind of a little more fitting with some of the uncertainty and doubt, and there's a lot of call for actions to maybe talk about what we're actually doing about security. And spending a lot of time with some of the CSA chapters in the APAC region this past week, I think strength in community is really what's been represented here today and this whole week that I've seen. And so that's what I wanted to talk about instead, was building security through community. And so I'll just talk a little bit about at least how CSA is doing it and how CSA as a community is doing it. And so this is just a little overview of what the Cloud Security Alliance is. And a lot of people ask me, what is CSA? What is the Cloud Security Alliance, and why should I join? And certainly there's a lot of things you can find on our website that we're a global nonprofit, that we're building best practices in the cloud. And we even have a great mission statement, promoting the use of best practices and providing security assurance within cloud computing. And I think all this is very fitting. We have certifications, we have for users, we have also provider certification, but I think the key thing for me is how we actually accomplish these things. And we do it through the CSA community, and I think that's the biggest important thing is the community that we're a part of. It's really the backbone of what we do, and I see it so much in the room today and in the building that we've seen these past couple of days. So yeah, community, CSA is not the only organization that does this. I know we like to align with groups like the FIDO Alliance, like ISC Squared, and how we see the CSA community fitting within the larger cloud community. Individual members, we have a lot of them. Over 64,000, makes us the largest IT professional group in the world. That's just one section of the community that we have. The other one we have up here is on corporate members. Over 250 corporate members, and this stretches across from major cloud providers, infrastructure providers such as the Amazons, Microsoft, Salesforce, and in addition to some of the smaller SaaS providers and cloud access security brokers that we see. In addition to that, I think what makes it important is that we also have a large end user member. So these are folks that are wanting to learn more about the cloud solutions and how to implement that into their business. And we have a large membership there too, which involves organizations like Coca-Cola, Costco, many of the banks and financial services, many of the organizations in healthcare as well. And so I think it just adds to a really a broad community that we have and a lot of talent that we have access to. And the third real pillar of our community, I think, is our chapters. And a perfect example is what we see today with the Thailand chapter and how we're just bringing together people under local events, under summits, and under specific research areas of focus. I think these are the key drivers in how we can assess some of the security issues that we're seeing today, is doing it through community. And that's such a big, important piece. Again, I think we're about aligning with other organizations, harmonizing our efforts in the industry. And, after all, that's what a community is. And we choose to play that role in the community. And so what do we do with this community, of course? I think that's the biggest thing. And leveraging this group to do research is such an important thing, I think, here. What we try to do is really solve tomorrow's problems today. And we do that through using this community. We can help identify a lot of the pain points that are happening in the industry, build solutions and practices, best practices around these models, as well as just create adoption and unique solutions that are going to be unique to some sort of issue that we're having. A lot of what we talked about today in healthcare and in social media and in insurance and protection. But these are the important things that I think we need to identify as a community and tackle them together. And we've done it already in a number of ways, and I'm happy to see this next slide actually does touch a little bit on this too. So some of the domains that you'll see here in what we're doing is in our broad research portfolio, we have some core research that we do on just guidance on critical areas of focus in cloud computing. We also have core research on security controls and implementing security controls into your organization, not only to assess your own security posture, but also to assess vendors. And we can also do that by mapping these security controls into other industry regulations and nation-state requirements. After all, I think when you're looking at business, that's kind of how we have to run and adopt security practices, is by how we're regulated and what we have to comply to. And so when we look at this research portfolio, it kind of gives a snapshot of the broad areas that we're focusing on. I think technology is a big one that we have here when we look at something like IoT when we look at something such as the mobile devices that are out there. When we look at something like an industry, I think healthcare is such a, it seems like it was one of the slower industries and verticals to move towards the cloud, and we've actually seen an increase in healthcare adoption of the cloud quite a bit lately. And you know, as my colleague stated too, is it in a private cloud, is it in a hybrid or a public cloud? And I think we're seeing it in all three phases. And there's certainly many pain points around there that I think having working groups around industry specifics, such as verticals such as healthcare, such as financial services, that's also highlighted here. If you're able to make out the small words. But this is, I think, coming together again, using the community, using not just our individual members that are worldwide, but the corporations, the key stakeholders that are invested, not just the solution providers, but the end users. And when we look at certain nation states and regions, we have chapters in some of the major countries across the world and in major regions across the world, and all looking to bring together regional communities that can contribute in fact to the larger community. And so I have a snapshot here just to kind of to give you a picture of kind of the things that we try to address in the working groups. Threat models, you know, how's it impacted? It's impacted through standards and other industry collaboration. But I think this gives you just a pretty good picture of what we can do together as a community. This next slide really just talks about the SDO relationship. And we're guided by standards, and CSA plays a critical role in incubating what standards are happening. I think one advantage we have is, with the CSA community at least, that we can look at issues that we can address in months. If you're ever in the standard space, we look at something that happens it puts you really ahead of the game. So I think it gives you a chance to kind of almost a sneak peek into the future. Not only do you see what's going to happen, but you have a little bit of impact and influence on how that's going to turn out. So I think there's a huge advantage in just being a part of a community. And you know, CSA is just kind of a window into that community. And so I think it's a really good opportunity that you can, to be a part of something like that. All right, so just learn, know, and connect, I guess. So I think the advantage of something like this is just as being in an event like we're doing today. We're here to, we have, I'm going to go back on this last slide here and really talk about the influence that we can see. We talk a little bit about how CSA research impacts standards, impacts certification, education, and training. And you can see how that can broaden up and impact on industry, thank you, on academics and government. And it's unique to be in a situation where you see industry leaders, industry competitors, academic and practitioners, and solution providers and end users all together under one roof. And we're all playing nice together. We're all kind of looking for the same goal, which is to build that trusted cloud ecosystem. And so I think when you look at a picture like this, I really love this slide because it kind of captures just the impact that you can have as a community on all these different areas, and how eventually it hits into the workforce to where it can really create a more secure culture, a more security-minded culture. I think any of us in business know that we don't have an infinite security budget in our organizations, that's for sure, right? And so if we can kind of take advantage of organizations like CSA, leverage the community, leverage the best practices, and using that actually to eliminate maybe up to 90% of the threat vectors before you even really have to look into other paid solutions. I think that's a big advantage. I think it's a smart solution. I think it's smart security. It's efficient security, and I think that's security through community. And so I think I just wanted to leave really with this last slide, which I think just shows a lot of impact in what CSA does. A way to engage in your CSA community here is to participate in chapters. The Thailand chapter has done an outstanding job of bringing people here for the third year in a row. And the APAC community, to me, this is my first time visiting the APAC community from the US, and I really see there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of countries and leaders that want to lead and not follow, and they want to be innovative, and they really want to be cutting edge researchers, and I see it in academia with my colleagues up next to me. I see it in industry with some of the chapter members and chapter leaders that I've seen here, and so participate, network with these individuals, you know, pave the way for yourself, create your brand, become an industry leader, and then use that to educate yourself, educate your colleagues, and I think that's one way I think that we can at least do something that's actionable. I know we had a lot of call to actions today, but I think just being a part of a community like this certainly is an advantage. And so, oh, that's my last slide. And so, yeah, thank you, and Kap Kun Krup. How'd I do? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, any questions? Please state your name before you ask the questions. Thank you. Convert everything into number before we put it, and we perform analysis anyway. So for any other type of analysis, what do they have to do? Because if you encrypt the data and then run analysis, maybe the algorithm won't be able to actually cache the relation that they need to cache. I'm not sure. So any insight on this, anyone?
So in the previous session, there was a researcher from Waikato, Dr. Ryan Ko, who mentioned a lot of the techniques that people have been building around secure search and being able to perform mathematical operations on encrypted data. So we're making progress there. Not all operations can be easily supported, and there's significant overhead in terms of like how you manage the keys and what kind of keys you use. But you know, that's kind of where things are headed. If you're in an environment where you can't be sure of how your data is stored, you're really not left with a lot of options. And so that's why the research community in that space has been working, I think, at least 20 years now on that problem. Yeah.
Yes, the technique that we can, process encrypted data without encrypting the data is called homomorphic encryption. And I could say clearly the homomorphic encryption is not practical, enough. It still takes time, to process. For example, just calculate one encrypted data with another encrypted data. Just sum up the two data. It might take over 10 minutes. Yeah. So clearly, it's not practical. However, the researcher, I could say, are working very hard to innovate this technology to be practical in the market.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, I'll have a question on back to healthcare. So, has there been any? I know encryption can be challenging in the cloud, but tokenization is something that a lot of new organizations in healthcare and government are doing. I'm not sure if you guys looked at that back when you were deciding to move towards a private or public cloud, and if that had any influence on your directions.
So I guess tokenization, are you referring to kind of the communications channel, like exchanging tokens between client server, that kind of thing, right?
And the data exchange. You
can have time-sensitive tokens, so the session can't be hijacked or whatever. Is that what you're talking about, referring to, or?
Sure. Yeah.
So for communications, tokens are a good approach, but I think one of the main concerns is really about what's called data at rest, which means that when you put the data there, it's at rest, right? And then there are, even when it's not client-server communications exchanges, but really just access to the data, to the storage where that data is placed, you know, regardless of the communications channel, there's still kind of ways that that data that is sitting on storage could be leaked. So, you know, some of the examples I mentioned, like cross channels. You're on the same physical hardware, but there are exploits, very recent exploits that show that one VM on the same physical server can exploit a channel and get access to other VMs on the same physical server. So there are exploits like that that, you know, you can't really proof against if you're not encrypting your data, because anyone who can get access to your VM or get access to your storage instance will be able to grab whatever's on it. And if you're not encrypting, basically, you know, you've left yourself exposed. So regardless of the other like even if you had very good tokenization, very good communications protocols to ensure against, you know, hijacking sessions, you still need your data to be encrypted. Otherwise, anyone who finds any breach into the cloud really can just take whatever they want.
I have a question for John also.
Reported it internally and reported it to LinkedIn. Flagged the user as an abusive user. So.
We see the new scam like every day and then we manage to catch them. But how fast are they adapting to the algorithm that we come up to catch these scams?
Oh, it's an ongoing situation you see with the social networks, constantly combating. Often they're providing these services free, and often they're providing extraordinary value to their users, but they're running it for free for them on an advertising model or something of that nature. So that means that we have a lot of valuable data residing in the cloud where the security budgets, it's simply not affordable for those entities to be spending a lot on security, given their business models. So I think you see this situation where we need more involvement from users on the ground, crowdsourcing, and official organisations such as the Cloud Security Alliance. I mean, I see John's final diagrams depicting the spheres of influence of the Cloud Security Alliance. And one of the things I see as a tangible call to action is I'd like to see the Cloud Security Alliance inviting members of the security teams of all those social networks to events and get them actively involved in these discussions. I think there's wonderful opportunities there, and that on the level of defining groups that Cloud Security Alliance is working with, and when you're defining standards, that also be extended to social networks, where each one is inventing their own protocols. And I think largely at the moment it's unmanaged, but at the same time, there's an incredible amount of very private data residing on the cloud.
Yeah, I think you mentioned too just you know, phishing attacks and even a denial of service attack with social media. But when you look at the devices you're using to connect to social media, it raises a whole new threat vector too when you're looking at behavioral tracking and pattern tracking and location tracking. If someone's your Facebook friend, they know where you are at so many different times. You know, I think some of us, I'm sure many of us checked into the hotel today, so everybody knows that we're not at home. and everyone's going to know that I'm not in the country. And there's even, if you're on Instagram, you don't even need to be friended to follow somebody on Instagram. And so another social media site like Instagram, you can actually follow just about anybody. So if there's a celebrity out there, if there's just a colleague or a friend, it's a whole new way to cyberstalk somebody without actually being their friend. And so yeah, it raises a whole new set of risks. So when you're actually able to track locations, to track behaviors, and so yeah, definitely causes something that we have to talk about. And I know you know we talk about this in the mobile working group. We talk about it with the Internet of Things, because in IoT, and you know, I think even some of the social, some of the social applications do this too, John. But they track you. They're continuously tracking your location, and so you don't have to check in. People can actually see where you are just about at all times of the day. So if you're stopping by the wrong massage spa, we're going to know about it, John. Just so you know. But yeah, social media is definitely a huge array of risks and threats, and we want to be smart about it. We want to be secure about it, and yeah, that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do.
If I come across a phishing site, what is the fastest way to get it down? Whom should I report? Should I report to the domain registrar or the hosting company? I know that many of those domain names they use the round robins and they keep changing the IP address. Mm-hmm. So, what should be the quickest way, please?
Institutions will outsource takedown services. That's for phishing sites that are hosted outside. Also, in particular in social network phishing sites that I've seen, taking it down. I personally had to forge relationships with relatively senior people in the various social networks so that I could escalate cases. Most of them now have report abuse UI functionality, which is a wonderful addition, and they certainly try and take it seriously, but unfortunately those buttons get abused by people who they're unhappy or frustrated or irritated with somebody and will report them as abuse. So they have to go beyond a certain threshold of evidence before they're willing to take things down. So yeah, that is a very difficult area. Maybe it's an area where we need...
Do you mind if I comment on that too?
Comment away.
I think incident response is a challenge that we've faced for years, and there's organizations like John mentioned in financial services. We have the ISACs, the Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, and now we have something new called Information Security Analyst Organizations, which is a little bit different. They're not so industry specific, and it also is kind of a new way to maybe share threats anonymously. Now, I know with social media, sometimes people think it's just from a consumer level. But I think in an enterprise, I mean, there's organizations, there's companies. Mazda has a social media site, and if that's compromised, now you have a window into some corporate data, or at least some, you know, all you need is a one door in sometimes, and that kind of builds your path into to penetrating your network even further. But CSA has actually just started a pilot program. So earlier this year in February, the U.S. presidential legislation proposal was encouraging organizations on information sharing. CSA's attempted this a few years ago, and it's hard to pick up steam because nobody wants to say, hey, that's me. Yeah, I got penetrated, I was breached, and what can I do about it? And so with the new pilot program that we're calling Cyber Incident Sharing Center, we have come up with a new, completely anonymized way that you can share threats. And we're connecting this to just networks, not just within the CSA, but with an organization that we're working with called TrueStar, which is helping us anonymize the data And it's not a filtering, I want to mention it's not a filtering method, so they never have an organization's data, but it's a way to just actually upload your data to this system anonymously. And understanding, I think, these threats and being able to see them ahead of time can help us respond quicker. So I think, again, I hope I'm not killing this, but I'm going back to security by community, where if we're all participating in information sharing centers, if we're all understanding a little bit more about the ISACs and the ISAOs that are happening all over the world, that's a way that we can respond together. We see the Black Hat community doing plenty of sharing passwords, sharing penetrations, and that's why we see a lot of repetitive attacks. We've seen it with organizations like Target. We've seen it with organizations like Sony that can not only cost you millions of dollars, it costs a lot of people their jobs, but also reputation. And so I think this is a great way to kind of counteract that, but it's just a matter of getting organizations to participate. And if Mazda would love to join the pilot program for Cloud CISC, I'd be happy to get you involved, because we'd love to find out about, from all organizations, providers and end users alike, what's happening and how we can then prevent some of these attacks from happening to the rest of us in the future.
Thank you very much, John and John. Anyway, just another question. I was going to ask Aloysius this morning. Aloysius, he mentioned about CSA is going to use some software from CIA, which I assume is the Central Intelligence Agency. Given that the CIA is in the business of intelligence, is this software is open source? Can you review the source code? Because they might be secretly collecting information from users and without the knowledge of the end users. So can you comment about that, please?
Yeah, sure. They're military methodologies that we put into a framework that can be adapted to any public cloud now. So if you look at some military command and control operations, there's a lot of air-gapped networks. And so what we've done with what's called the software-defined perimeter is created a perimeter where your internet is dark, your internet is undiscoverable, except for by pre-authenticated devices, and then you still have to authenticate a user also. And so by creating a dark network with simple security components that already exist, that are proven and simple, and taking these components that we all are aware of and just putting them to this framework, which is just a logistical procedural framework, is really all it is. And implementing that, we've seen it being adopted by your organization. We know Coca-Cola is using it too, because Coca-Cola has a number of vending machines, all different kinds of vending machines, hundreds of thousands, millions across the world that they want to use for tracking sales, tracking supply and demand when they need to replenish Coke machines. Also with credit card purchases on vending machines these days too. And again, I know Mazda with smart cars and smart devices, we're using it to protect IoT devices, because that's another challenge with IoT devices, is that it's back to when you have devices that are measuring metrics continuously without a user verification. How do you authenticate how that device interacts with your network? And we're seeing it in healthcare too, right? I think patients have pacemakers for heartbeat regulation, insulin pumps that are in the body that are constantly monitored, not just by patients but by doctors. And so any type of false reporting is, or can you imagine somebody getting in that system, and that can really lead to some severe penalties. And so I think something like the software-defined framework is something that, have a look at it. We actually have a specification document available on the cloudsecurityalliance.org website. It doesn't go into a whole lot of detail, but it gives you a basic idea of the framework. And I think our goal in the next year is to really break down the framework a little bit more into almost like a DIY model, where you can do it yourself on specific components. And so, hopefully that's a valuable. We know it's already a value of Mazda, because you guys are using it.
Yes. Yep. Thank you so much for that. Just one last comment, not really a question. I actually under the same large umbrella organization with Dr. Kunwadi, but I was not aware of her research until today. I think your research has a lot more applications, because a lot of government agencies, not only in Thailand but all the world, they are skeptic about using the public cloud to store organization data. So if your research becomes successful and is put into practice, I'm sure a lot of government agencies can make use of that. So thank you.
Okay, so we are actually out of time. So let's please join me in thank you the presenters again. So thank you for participating in this session, and I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, if you decide to come. Must come, yeah.